Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to this seminar series. As said, my name is Václav Hrnčíř, and I'm from the Department of Linguistics and Culture Evolution at the Planck Institute in Leipzig. In this talk, I want to discuss some cross-cultural insights into the origins of alcoholic beverages and their role in human evolution. I've chosen this topic because people's attitude towards alcohol is highly ambivalent and somewhat paradoxical. On one hand, alcohol is the most widely used psychoactive drug consumed in most parts of the world, as you can see on this map, and it's also one of the most ancient drugs. In many societies, drinking alcohol is linked with many positive associations, such as celebration, feasting, sociability, relaxation, stress reduction, and also the enjoyment of food. On the other hand, alcohol has also many well-known negative social and health consequences, especially in the case of excessive drinking. So I think it's important to try to understand this kind of paradoxical situation and try to understand the possible origins of our relationship with this drug. But before going to the main part of this talk focused on cross-cultural research, let's look at non-human primates, the drunken primates, because during last year there appeared a series of really interesting papers showing that humans are not the only one that got regularly intoxicated with alcohol. The first study by Domine and colleagues showed that gorillas and chimpanzees, unlike orangutans, consume a lot of fallen fruit. They call them kind of scrumped fruit. And compared to fruit on the trees, called arborescent fruit, the fallen one is usually overripe and fermented, indicating ingestion of alcohol or ethanol. Authors highlight that these species of mountain gorilla, western gorilla, chimpanzees share with humans and bonobo the same genetic mutation that allows them to better metabolize ethanol, which is otherwise kind of toxic substance. Another study then confirmed that ripe fruit consumed by chimpanzees really contains ethanol, and specifically on average 0.3%. Although this seems like a small amount, considering the amount of fruit eaten by these chimpanzees, which is mainly their main food, and adjusting for their body weight, authors argue that chimpanzees might ingest the equivalent of more than 2 standard alcoholic drinks a day, which can correspond to 2 cans of beer or 2 glasses of wine. Paper from just 2 weeks ago from the same team then confirmed that chimpanzees really ingest enough alcohol because this kind of ethanol has been detected in their urine. And what's also interesting, wild chimpanzees not only consume fermented fruit with confirmed levels of alcohol, but also share it and consume it together. So similarly as we humans do with alcoholic drinks, for us it's also mostly social activity and not a solitary thing. So take it together, the primatological research does suggest that the dietary incorporation of ethanol containing fruits and its sharing may have really deep root and played a significant role in our evolution, especially in regards to the social bonding. And all these studies also provide empirical evidence in support of the drunken monkey hypothesis, proposed by Robert Dudley. And this hypothesis states that our primate ancestors evolved to be attracted to the smell and taste of alcohol, as well as the ability to metabolize it, because ethanol in ripe fruit indicates the co-presence of simple sugars. And so the individuals who can find and eat more of these kind of ethanol-laden fruit gained more energy and more calories that were otherwise scarce in the tropical forest. This theory, or the author, however, also adds that what was originally adaptive consumption later became maladaptive once humans began producing and consuming alcohol on a large scale. So, which brings us, to humans and the origins of alcohol production. The earliest, when we look at the earliest iconographic and written records, we find them in like the ancient civilizations such as Mesopotamia, dating back to 3,000 or 4,000 BC. For example, under the slide, you can see some examples of scenes depicting beer consumption from large vessels through straws, like here, or a tablet, recording the daily rations of beer for workers, or the Sumerian hymn to Ninkasi, the goddess of beer. However, we also know that alcoholic beverages, the production of alcoholic beverages predate the earliest written records by at least like several thousand years, which has been evidenced by archaeological research. So far, the earliest indisputable evidence come from early Neolithic China, where residue analysis of ceramic vessels like this, which are dated to the 7th or 6th millennium BC, revealed a mixed fermented beverage of rice, honey, and fruit, namely autumn fruit or grape. So, and although like alcohol production is obviously not dependent on the invention of writing or pottery, finding like direct evidence from pre-pottery or pre-agricultural Paleolithic societies is unfortunately much more difficult. An example of this is the study of useware and residue analysis of stone mortars from Natufian burial site Rakefet in Israel, dated to 13,000 years ago. Authors of this study interpret the results as evidence of brewing wheat or barrel-based beer. Other scholars question this conclusion and argue that it's rather evidence of cereal food production and not beer production. And this brings us to the three main hypotheses about the origins of alcohol production. According to the tradition, alcoholic beverages were discovered accidentally as a byproduct of agriculture and the grain storage. At some point, stored grain became wet, and wild yeast that are naturally present in the environment began fermenting the sugar and produce alcoholic rich food, gruel or drink. Some people tasted the results, found it pleasant or at least interesting, and then started to experimenting and brewing such beverages intentionally. In contrast, there is like the Paleolithic hypothesis that argued that humans discovered alcoholic intoxication much earlier, like non-human primates that I discussed, through naturally fermenting fruit or honey. And again, once they can find this taste like interesting or pleasant, they started experimenting with intentional fermentation, in organic containers, such as woven baskets, leather bags, or wooden vessels. However, these are, of course, there is no evidence of them because of their organic nature and rare preservability. So it's very difficult to prove this hypothesis, and that's why we don't have any evidence. And finally, there is the so-called beer before bread hypothesis, according to which not only did people begin producing alcoholic beverages before the advent of agriculture, but the desire for intoxication was actually the main motive for people to start cultivating plants and started to live a sedentary lifestyle. As Katz and Voigt put it in their rhetorical question, given a choice of gruel, or bread, or brew, which would you rather have? In other words, the drive for intoxication and its social and ritual importance might provide it stronger incentive and stronger motivation for the shift to agricultural and labor-intensive lifestyle than simple caloric needs, which could theoretically be met through through foraging. So, for example, it's argued that the building of early monumental sites, such as Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, that was clearly done by hunter-gatherer groups, was driven by beer feasting that includes a lot of alcohol. Because gathering of a lot of people that is supposed to happen at this site required, and pushed the local populations, toward deliberately cultivating wild grains to satisfy the needs of these relatively dense populations. However, so far as I know, evidence for beer production from this site is only indirect, and it's suggested mostly through the presence of these barrel and through limestone vessels that can have capacities up to 160 liters. Importantly, it's important to know that this beer before bread hypothesis primarily relates to the domestication of cereals such as wheat and barley in fertile crescent rice in China or maize in Central America. However, recent research on the beginnings of agriculture clearly shows that these processes were much slower and more gradual than previously thought. They occurred in many more regions. Some studies says up to 24, and definitely were not limited to cereals, but included also other plants that are not so easily fermentable or suitable for fermentation. So this new research or defy single factor explanation. So even through this, the beer before bread theory may have some merit in these traditional regions of cereal domestication. It's probably not a universal factor for the plant domestication and the beginnings of agricultural or lifestyle. So this was introduction, and now let's move to this cross-cultural studies. The first one is focusing on recent hunter-gatherers and what their use of alcoholic beverages and their production can potentially tell us about the production of alcohol by Paleolithic hunter-gatherers. As you probably know, many societies lived as hunter-gatherers until very recently, and few groups still do. And many of these kind of recent groups have been well documented by ethnographers. Here, for example, you can see the global distribution of more than 300 hunter-gatherers groups in a database created by Louis Binford. So my research was about to look at some of these societies and in detail and find out, the information about their approach to alcoholic beverages. And I did this through collecting data from EHRAF, World Culture Database, which is really a great source of ethnographic literature covering more than 360 cultures, not only hunter-gatherers, but other traditional subsistence-based societies such as agriculturists or pastoralists. And what's great about this database that it contains kind of full text of ethnographic literature that can be searched through keywords, but not only that, each paragraph has been coded thematically. So, for example, this paragraph from the Marlow's book on the Hadza has several topics, including acculturation and culture contact, and the alcoholic beverages, which is my theme of my interest. And for example, this paragraph says very important information that the Hadza also drink as much alcohol as they can, which is very little. But they do not make alcohol themselves. They trade honey to their agro-pastoralist neighbors who use it to make beer and give them some in return. So indicating that these hunter-gatherer group didn't have their own alcohol, but learn to drink it only after the contact with kind of agro-pastoral neighbors. So far, I've checked literature on for approximately 80 societies, but this is still a work in progress. And as you can see on this map, majority of analyzed recent forages didn't make their own indigenous alcoholic drinks. Or at least there is no mention in the ethnographic record. But there are for around 10 cases from some from Africa, some from Australia, and some from South America, with the presence of indigenous alcoholic drinks. And there are also some kind of questionable cases. So when we look on these cases with kind of present fermented beverages, we find that kind of modern hunter-gatherers made alcohol from a variety of raw materials. Most often mentioned is honey, or like the meat, so fermented honey water, which was documented in several societies in Africa, for example, among Okiet, which are known to be the good beekeepers. Others are Aka from Central Africa, and several societies from South America, such as Heta, Abipon, Aveikoma, and Syriana. Sometimes, the drink, it's only kind of honey diluted in water and then fermented. But in other cases, these drinks include also some additional fermenting agents, such as certain types of tree bark or leaves or fern. Alcohol has been documented to be made also from other materials, such as fruits. For example, Australian Yanova made it from the crushed nuts of the spiral pandanus. Abipon, if in South America, made it from these kind of alpha robopods, and already mentioned Heta didn't make only alcohol from honey, but also from like various wild fruits and nuts, such as these. And they made it depending on the season. Type is a tree sap. For example, Tasmanians made fermented alcoholic drink from the sap of the cider gum, while Bororo in I think in Africa, South America, made it from sap of the aquari palm. For other groups in Central Africa, like Koya, Aka, and Baka, there's also some mention of a palm wine, but these cases are kind of questionable because it's unclear whether it's their own original invention or whether they learn it from their neighboring farmers who also kind of make palm wine. Lastly, in the southwest of Australia, people made a fermented drink from the flowering cones of a banksia plant. So we can see that only in Australia there are at least 3 different types of materials from which people make alcoholic drinks. You might notice that there is like basically no evidence or very little evidence of alcoholic drinks from North America, but there are at least some kind of questionable or potential cases. For example, Chiricahua that are living in the region from in Arizona to Texas made several alcoholic beverages from various materials, included kind of maize and succulents. But yeah, again, it's not clear whether it was their like ancient innovation or only like recent introduction through their contact with agricultural neighbors. Naskapi from the Labrador Peninsula, for them there is kind of contradictory evidence. Several authors explicitly say that they did not make any alcoholic drinks before contact with Europeans, but there is one source that says that they were producing intoxicating drink from berries. And lastly, there are kind of Aleuts in Alaska, and the sources, ethnographic sources, kind of agree that they didn't have any alcohol before kind of contact with the Russians. However, there is one kind of legendary story that says that they accidentally invented it from like the fermenting berries, but they very quickly abandoned the idea of drinking it because it has kind of bad consequences for them. Yeah, so that was all about the different types of materials, and I probably don't have to stress, that the ethnographic literature also provide a lot of information about these archaeologically invisible organic containers that has been used for storing liquids, including like fermented drinks, as well as for the actual fermentations. These include, baskets, bar containers, and what's pretty common, for example, in South America, is these kind of long wooden troughs or lecterns used for fermentation, mostly like kind of corn beer, but also others kind of drinks. So now back to the previous map. So just to summarize, there are some hunter-gatherer groups that make alcoholic beverages, but many of them, not many, most of them not. And so let's discuss some possible reasons why they don't make alcohol. Because making, for example, meat from like the honey and water is relatively simpler because the fermentation is kind of natural process. So why don't these societies don't make alcohol if it's not like super complicated technology? The first reason might be kind of environmental and climatic conditions. For example, it's been said for like the Selkman that are living at the Tierra del Fuego in South America. And for them, anthropologists Gusinder wrote that, they could not possibly have manufactured any alcoholic beverage, for what is most essential for this is lacking. For the berries do not ripen sufficiently and contain little sugar. I suspect that the similar case may be said, for other very regions with harsh and cold environments, such as Alaska, Greenland, or Siberia. And that also theoretically might explain why North American societies don't have alcoholic beverages, because their ancestors had to cross this kind of Bering Strait and these regions with very harsh climate, so they theoretically might forget how to make alcoholic drinks, which brings us to this kind of second argument and the second explanation, and this is the lack of knowledge, and also which is connected also to seasonality, because we know from like the ethnographic record that a lot of hunter-gatherer groups make kind of sweet non-alcoholic drinks, mixing different types of berries and water. A lot of evidence is, for example, from Australia, but only few of them let them ferment and drink like this kind of alcoholic version. And for example, this kind of reference says that that the people learned to drink it, but only after they after the contact with the Europeans and the introduction of whiskey. Another example is the San or the Kung from the South Africa that have learned breathing from Bantu, but and the problem was that they had all the materials like water, honey, and fruits, but in their environment they were obtainable only seasonally. So the chance to make and enjoy alcoholic beverages was very rare. Yeah, with this lack of knowledge is connected also the question of taste, because many societies that made these kind of sweet drinks don't drink them once they went through fermentation, because they think that that they don't like the sour taste, or think it's gonna spoil. And lastly, some societies may have avoided alcohol because it's of its psychoactive effects. For example, some may have associated intoxication with spirit possession. So even if they kind invented or discovered how to make alcoholic drinks, they kind avoid it and didn't produce it. Yeah, so but when looking at recent hunter-gatherers and trying to make some insights about the possible life of prehistorical hunter-gatherers, we came to several limitations. The first one is that recent hunter-gatherers are not isolated or pristine. I already kind of mentioned that many of them lived for centuries with a close contact with agricultural society, so it's very difficult from these records say better the alcohol they made was like their original kind of prehistorical invention, or whether they learned it only after the contact with agriculturists. Although some of these kind of recent hunter-gatherers were not kind of full-time hunter-gatherers and did kind of limited plant cultivation. For example, this is a case of Seriano. And others that were at the time of kind of ethnographic research or fieldwork really kind of like true foragers. They might be they once might be farmers that turned into foragers, which might be, for example, the case of Heta and again in South America. On the other hand, there might be also some biases regarding the absence of alcoholic beverages because the ethnographic record is incomplete. For example, society could make alcoholic drink, but it was either not observed or not reported by the ethnographer. So we don't know. And part of this explanation, part of this kind of non-recording might be due to seasonality, because ethnographic record shows that in many of these hunter-gatherer societies, they produce alcohol only seasonally when they have kind of available, when the material for fermentation is available. So if the field work was quite short, for example, only a few weeks or a few months, the ethnographers could be there in the season where there was no alcoholic drinks, but in other seasons they might produce them. Okay, now move to the last part of my talk and the study and the possible role of alcohol in the rise of social-political complexity. I've already mentioned the drunken monkey hypothesis, arguing that the current overconsumption of alcohol is an evolutionary mismatch and some kind of hangover. Attraction to alcohol has been adaptive for our ancestors and our non-human and from non-human great apes, because levels of ethanol available in fermented fruits is relatively small. But in modern context with basically unlimited access to high alcoholic drinks, these attractions became maladaptive. However, there is a contrasting hypothesis called drunk hypothesis, elaborated by Edward Slingerland in his book of the same name, and he argues, that alcohol drinking has been adaptive also after its large-scale production. Because intoxication helps solve a number of distinctively human challenges. For example, it increases cooperation, enhances human creativity, and also promotes social bonding. And in this sense, drinking alcohol helps us to build and maintain large-scale societies for which creativity, trust, and cooperation are necessary. Other authors also attribute an important social and political role to alcohol. For example, Michael Dietler says that alcohol is not just a foodstuff. It's a medium that allows surplus of agricultural produce to be converted indirectly into labor, prestige, social credit, political power, brightware, or other durable valuables. From a political point of view, in less complex societies, alcohol can serve as an important tool to gain leadership, while in hierarchical society, its centralized production and redistribution can help to maintain and reinforce existing power structures. So, together with my colleagues Angela Kira and Russell Gray, we decided to test this drunk hypothesis, especially one particular aspect. The idea that the consumption of traditional low alcohol fermented beverages played a significant role in promoting this large-scale cooperation and the development of complex hierarchical societies. And to do this, we again collected data from ethnographic record on the presence of indigenous alcohol for a global sample of 186 largely non-industrial societies, the so-called standard cross-culture sample. Here you can see the sample in higher detail, and you might notice that the indigenous alcohol was present in most parts of the world. However, there were like two main regions, namely the North America, as I already discussed in the case of hunter-gatherer societies, but also in kind of Oceania. One argument why the alcohol is missing in this region is that they had that the societies here have different kind of intoxicants, namely tobacco in North America and kava and betel in Oceania. So we collected the data on the presence of alcohol, and we also gathered data for the political complexity, which we have chosen as a proxy for kind of culture complexity or civilization. The political complexity variable is a 5-point scale variable that measures the number of distinct jurisdictional levels that are recognizable in the society, and that classifies culture on a scale from acephalous that lack any centralized political authority through kind of simple chiefdoms with like 2 levels, through complex chiefdoms, to states that are organized into several administrative levels, such as towns, districts, counties, and central government. It's very simplified proxy, but easily measurable and strongly correlates with other measures of culture complexity. So that's why we have chosen this. And then once we have these variables, we run kind of several Bayesian regression models and trying to discover, the strength of the relationship between alcohol and political complexity. In the most simplest models, we have only these 2 variables, finding, that there is really kind of relatively strong and what's important, the positive association between these 2 variables. In the second model, we controlled for like the common potential confounders, which is kind of shared ancestry and spatial proximity that could kind of influence the relationship, because societies that live close together or that share like the common history might have kind of similar patterns of political organization, or might share the types of food and type of technologies that they use. However, once controlling for these variables, the effect was basically the same, and we assume that this is because we use this kind of standard cross-culture sample that was kind of designed to select only societies that are not related to each other or very weakly related to each other. In the next model, we have kind of included another confounder, which we call kind of environmental productivity. It's based on several like environmental variables, and we control for it because we think in more kind of environmentally productive kind of regions or the places, it's higher chance to find a larger variety of potentially fermentable materials. And also in environmental productivity, there is, the environmental productive might lead to higher population densities and in turn also higher political complexity. There is also a variable of agriculture that was not kind of incorporated in the model, because this model cannot test this so-called beer before bread hypothesis, arguing that it was alcohol that led to the agriculture and not vice versa. And in that case, the effect was again the same. However, when we can reverse the assumptions and says, okay, it's not the alcohol that leads to agriculture, but it's mostly like the agriculture that increases the probability of kind of presence of alcohol, we find that the relationship between alcohol and political complexity is much much weaker. Still positive, but the effect size are smaller and also somewhat uncertain. When we added also again, when we return the environmental productivity into the model, the results were same as in the previous model. Okay, these values are kind of on a log scale, but when we kind of converted them to the original 5-point scale of this political complexity, from kind of acephalous through simple chiefdom, complex chiefdoms, and states, we kind of found out that the effect in these kind of models 4 and 5 that include agriculture are really relatively small, only like 0.3. So so theoretical presence of alcohol, like beverages and like simple chiefdoms doesn't change them into like the complex chiefdoms, only like move them on the scale from like 1 to 2 or by 0.3, like in the abstraction and on average. So our conclusion is that, yeah, there is really some positive association that might kind of confirm the Drang hypothesis, but the effect is really small, and alcohol itself was not the main driver of the rise of civilizations. And of course, our study has also a lot of limitation. First, we use only binary data on presence and absence of indigenous alcohol, but in ideal world, we would use data on the intensity of consumption, which is what actually matter. Unfortunately, these information are not available in the ethnographic record. And second, our results are basically kind of correlational. So, but also, the theoretical framework of causal inference kind of allows to infer causality from these kind of cross-cultural and cross-sectional data. This kind of requires several assumptions to be met, and one of them is that the models contain all important confounders. While we include those that we think are the most important, like agriculture and environmental production, it's possible that we can miss some others that might be even like important, and at the end might nullify the effect that we have found. And second, our method kind of allows only like unidirectional causality and the assumptions, that it's the alcohol that leads to the political complexity, but in reality, there might be the causality might be bidirectional or even reversed, because one might say, no, it's actually the political complexity that leads to the presence of agriculture, because larger and more complex societies usually trade and are in contact with a greater number of neighbors in different communities, which makes them more likely to acquire new foods and new technologies, or they may develop a more intensive alcohol production, which again leads to more higher probability of presence of alcohol. Okay, so to conclude, the first study of alcoholic beverages among hunter-gatherers can indicate that alcohol was probably produced even before agriculture, because we have several cases of recent hunter-gatherers that make these drinks, but the alcohol was probably not like universally present in among like Paleolithic societies. And the second study says that there is really probably positive association between the presence of alcohol and the higher political complexity, so that alcohol really might have facilitated the emergence of complex societies, but it was not the main driver, as has been suggested, unless you kind of believe in the beer before bread theory, that the alcohol was the main driver of the presence of the origins of agriculture. And with this, I would like to thank you for your attention, and also thanks to my colleagues, especially Angela Kura and Russell Gray. Thank you.
Let me put my mic on. Thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating. I really, really enjoyed that. If you want to unshare your screen, and then we can see everybody in the call. So if anybody has any questions, as I said before, either raise your hand and I'll call on you, and you can unmute and put your camera on as you'd like, or you can put them into the chat and I will read them out. We do already have a comment from John saying, although he had to leave, it was an absolutely fascinating talk.
Oh, thank you.
I really didn't expect the kind of the lack of alcohol in the North American groups. I found that really surprising.
Yeah, actually, there is one paper that I need to kind of read in more detail that argues that there are several other cases of fermented beverages in North American societies. But yeah, on average or in global, it's mostly lacking in many of these.
Yeah, really interesting. And I might have missed it, but what percentage of the groups that you do see alcohol in, do you think you can give a percentage on ones that you think have independently evolved that versus people who may have been influenced by outside factors?
Yeah, I think I have like 10 out of 80 with the present. So it's about like 10%, but it's also because most of the societies is from North America, so it might be kind of regional bias because it's not kind of representative of a global sample. And yeah, but again, I have also like only few societies from Australia where it's generally believed that most of the societies didn't have fermented beverages. And now I found only, but now I included only 4, and 3 of them because I found the book about the presence of alcoholic in Australian society. So this, it's on the other hand kind of increases the numbers or the percentages. Yeah, but in general, it seems like 10 or 20% of hunter-gatherer societies have these kind of drinks.
Really interesting, thanks. We've got a couple of other people in the chat saying excellent talk, really interesting.
Thanks.
Yeah, if any other questions, very welcome. We have a question from Havor saying, are you aware of evidence that the use of alcohol prior to agricultural revolution was linked to religious behavior at all?
Yeah, I think that this is the case of the Göbekli Tepe that that was kind of part of kind of religious cult that kind of led also to the building of these monuments. But what I don't know what other links are meant by the person. But for example, regarding the Göbekli Tepe, I was there recently at a conference, and there's new evidence that it wasn't only kind of like mostly like religious temple, but that there are evidence of the residential building. So maybe it's more like really like community and not just like the place of gatherings for like religious purposes or something like that.
Yeah, makes sense. We've got a comment from Isabel saying, thank you. I hadn't realized the evidence for alcohol use was far from universal, which is the same.
Yeah.
I mean, as you know, I'm doing a little bit of ethnographic research, doing similar cross-cultural samples. Have you found it very time-consuming collecting all this evidence?
Yes, it is time-consuming. Yeah, so yeah, but I think maybe it will change because I recently read a paper about kind of trying to automatize this with kind of AI and these large language models, and they found that the quality is similar to the like human coders. So
useful.
It might really kind of improve or make it more time efficient.
Yeah, I found it very time consuming on my side.
Yeah.
So that would be very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, because for example, if there are no other question, I can say that reading these ethnographies, there might be like 100 paragraphs on like alcohol, and one needs to read everything, but relevant information is only like in 5 of them or something, because mostly it is about introduce alcohol, for example, which is not relevant to my question, but it's labeled like alcohol. So
yeah, that makes sense. We'll just give it another minute or two to see if we have any last questions. Anybody's typing. We have a question, a hand up from Johan.
yes.
I think you should be able to unmute. I think I did the right settings this time, so go ahead.
Hi, thanks. I just had a question about the your causal inference diagrams. So if I remember rightly, model 4 and 5, did you control for shared ancestry and complexity, or if they're colliders, should you not? Then you shouldn't control for them. Is that right?
Yes, but when comparing like the first model and the second model, the first model was without these kind of confounders of shared ancestry and spatial proximity, and the results with controlling for them were the same. So I don't think it can influence the results in the rest of the models.
Okay, so I'm not as familiar with the causal inference models, but I thought with colliders you don't control for them.
No.
Okay.
Colliders. Yeah, I think no.
Sorry, yeah, it's just.
Yeah,
I was interested that you're using those diagrams. Yeah.
Yeah, I can maybe. Yeah, sure again, and maybe we can discuss it in detail.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you mean, for example, this, right?
Right. Yeah. So are shared ancestry and spatial proximity, are they colliders then, because they have an influence on alcohol and complexity?
Yes. Yeah.
And I thought with colliders you don't control for them. So am I wrong?
Yeah. Yeah. What do you mean by colliders? I think.
Things that have an effect on both. So, gosh, how do you describe? You open up the causal path if you control for them.
Yeah, but I guess they are not colliders, right? They are like confounders. I need to.
Well, I need to go. And I said I'm just getting used to these causal inference diagrams, and that distinction between colliders and confounders sometimes. Yeah, I'm still getting to grips with that. But I just wondered.
Needs to connect. Yeah. These are not. Yeah, I just Google it. These are not colliders, because the collider would be that the alcohol leads to shared ancestry and political complexity leads to the shared ancestry, and not if the link is from kind of. Sorry, yeah, I need to again this laser pointer. So if the arrows would be reversed, then it's collider, but now it's kind of confounder. And for example, here we didn't kind of control for agriculture because it was kind of mediator. And
Right, okay,
so
yeah.
in that case, you don't control for it.
Yes, okay, yeah, get that.
Yeah. So
Okay,
yeah.
that's great. That's
Sorry, I forgot what the collider means, so I just need to.
No, that's great. Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Another question.
Yeah, we have another question from Sue in the chat here saying, was there any evidence in hunter-gatherer groups for selective access to alcohol, i.e. only some people allowed to make or drink alcohol?
Yes, on like a general scale, on a global scale, not only for hunter-gatherers, it's usually true that the men drink alcohol and not the women. But for hunter-gatherers, it was more balanced. I think that there are several examples where both, like the men and women, could drink, and maybe one example that it was kind of mostly for men. But yeah, it varies. But in some groups, definitely there are some like rules based on gender or the age.
Makes sense. Thanks very much.
Yeah, and about the making, it also kind of varies. In some societies, alcohol is made by women because it's kind of part of food preparation. But in others, I think one Australian society, it was made by men. So yeah, it's variable.
Very interesting. Thanks. I think that might be a nice place to leave everything. Thank you so much for such an interesting talk. I found it, really interesting, really cool, and it's a pleasure to hear what you're doing. And thank you very much, everybody, for attending. It's been fab to have you. So I'm going to click end event now, but it is going to take my teams a long time to end the event. So if you want to leave, please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much for listening and for the invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.